Happy Friday, everybody. It's Marianne with the Hip Senior Live community, and I am with Linda Aivalotis, and we are talking about wine and is it healthy today? And Linda, take it away because it is Friday. Let's party.
Yay, it's Friday. First of all, this is happy hour, right? So I do have my
Nice.
wine for happy hour.
Cheers.
And so on my side, I've got my water, of course, because this is just a side note. For every sip of wine you take, you should take a sip of water. If you do that, you'll never get a hangover, no matter how much wine you drink. But we don't want to drink too much wine. All right.
Then you don't have an excuse the next day to be like, I can't do it. I'm hungover. Hey, I saw Claire's joined us. Claire, welcome. Hey, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A section. Please throw any questions or comments. Would love to see some questions for Linda up in the Q&A as well.
So awesome. All right. So I am so glad to be here for week 2 for our continued Friday happy hour class about wine. So this is class number 2. You can find recording of class number 1 on the Hip Senior YouTube channel.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's
the easiest way to find that is to go to livecommunity.online and just scroll down to last week's.
Perfect. All right. I am Linda Aivalotis, and I'm here to share a bit about my wine knowledge with you and anybody else who wants to click on later. I have been certified through the Wine and Spirits Education Trust, which is shortcut WESA, with a level 1 award. I worked in a wine tasting bar where I talked about wine all day, every day to lots of people, learned a ton, shared a ton. I also sell wine. I'm a rep for a company that is headquartered out of Texas. I'm also in the process of building a company focused solely on wine travel throughout the world. So I think you've probably guessed it. I absolutely love wine, and I'm so excited to be sharing what I know with a brand new audience. So let's go over quickly how our Friday happy hours work. First and foremost, you are welcome, even encouraged, to bring your own glass of wine. It is happy hour. So that's the point. Bring your wine. Secondly, I'm going to spend the next 3 weeks sharing some, and this is one of those 3 weeks, sharing some basics with you. And like I said, you can catch week 1 on the YouTube channel. Then in week 5, we're going to begin our guided wine tastings. And I will be profiling a specific type of wine from a specific location in the world with you. For those meetings, I will tell you what wine to purchase, and it will be type and location specific, such as a Sauvignon Blanc from Northern California, not brand specific. And as we move through these classes, you'll figure out why that's important. And if you would like to taste the exact wine that I will be profiling, then you can purchase those wines through me. And yes, I do earn a little bit off of each bottle that you buy, but it's totally up to you which way you want to do it. Because generally, when we pick a wine from a certain location, they're going to all have very similar tasting profiles. So it doesn't really matter who made them. All right, so let's get started on this week's topic. Is wine healthy? So this has been debated probably for as long as wine has been around, and it's been around for literally thousands of years. Wine is generally made from grapes, but if you listen to last week's, you'll find out that it can be made from other kinds of fruits. They're also natural and healthy for you, right? If we just shoot that thought forward, that must mean wine is also healthy for you. And we're going to put a little maybe on it. Maybe wine is healthy for you. Maybe it's not. That'll be for you to answer by the time we're done. I think you have, just being human, you have probably experienced that most things that are healthy for you are good in small doses, but they may not be so good for you in overabundance. And wine is definitely one of those things. So there you go, right off the bat. Yes, in small quantities, no in overabundance. So it has been determined by those who determine these things that the optimum limit for wine is 1 5-ounce glass for women per day and 2 5-ounce glasses for a meal, with a maximum of 5 5-ounce glasses per week for women and 10 for men. So there are a number of reasons for this. Part of it is size and how we metabolize. Women metabolize alcohol much more slowly than men. When you get these five, and there's 7 days in a week, right? It's probably a good idea to drink wine on a couple of days and then take a day off, and then wine for a couple of days and then take. There's this thing called habit, and we don't really want to make wine a habit, right? Because that could lead to overabundance, and then that's not good for you. All right. So of the three kinds of wines that you're probably familiar with, red wine, white wine, and rosé, red wine has more health benefits than the other two. Rosé has more health benefits than white, but less than red. And white has the least amount of health benefits. White grapes are harvested sooner than red grapes, and due to this, they tend to have more natural sugar in them. They also don't have all of the enzymes, natural, lovely stuff that live on the darker skins of red grapes. Nature was very generous to red grapes because they take longer to grow. They're out there in the field in nature, getting attacked by all kinds of things like bacteria and bees and all kinds of whatever, fungi
Birds.
and all kind, yeah, birds, yeah, all those things. Yeah, the riper they get, the more birds love them too. So because of that, nature gave the red grapes more defense systems than white grapes. And those defense systems are actually what are healthy for humans. Very cool. Very cool. I love nature and how it all works it's like a big cycle, like that cycle of nature thing. Rosé has more than white because rosé is actually made from red grapes. So we just talked about the skins and how that defense system lives on those skins of the red grapes. What they do with rosé is well, back. All grape juice is white. Every grape that you've ever bitten into, doesn't matter what color the skin was, when you bit into it, it was the same color on the inside. It was that kind of off-white, almost yellow inside. That is the color of grape juice when they squeeze the grapes originally. How do we get red wine? How do we get rosé wine? They put the skins. So with rosé, they only put the skins in just long enough to get the color that the winemaker wants. And you've seen, probably, if you've shopped for rosé wine, you've seen any range of color of rosés from a very light, almost transparent pink to a peach color to an orange to a bright pink. All of this depends on how long the skins have been in there.
I
So
had no idea
sometimes the
about
skins
that.
are, yeah, sometimes the skins are only in there for 10 minutes. They just want just a little bit of a pink. And then they pull the juice off the skins really quickly, just very light. So as the skins are bleeding their color off, they're also bleeding off all those good things that live on the skin. If they're only in there 10 minutes, not a lot of color comes off, not a lot of those good things come on. So that's why rosé is not as healthy as reds are, because when they make red wine, they leave that skin in there sometimes for a very long time. So other times, the lighter colored wine like this. This was made from a very dark grape, and they left those skins in there for quite some time to get it this dark as it bled. So could be a really healthy wine.
Guessing, Linda, that when you said that grape juice, I'm guessing grape juice cannot get that dark blue, whatever it is, dark by the skins. I'm guessing a lot of that's artificial coloring.
No, so if you're talking about purple grape juice that you drink, you can buy in the store that's just plain old grape juice that hasn't been fermented. My guess is that if you're buying from the big corporations, it probably is food coloring. If you're buying from somebody who says they do it all natural, it may actually have grape skins in there for a little while to get that color. And juice, you might be able to tell by looking at the label what's in there. If it has a red dye number, whatever, or a purple dye in there, for sure it's dyed. If it doesn't, if you don't see any color listed, then it's probably natural. They probably did put the skins in there for a while.
I
So,
had no clue about that. Thank you.
yeah. Yep. So, yeah, read the labels. And we'll get into labels toward the end of the presentation.
Claire said
Because
rose all day.
Pardon?
Claire said rose all day.
Rose all day. Rose all day.
Oh,
Yep.
rose. Sorry.
Yep.
Call me
Okay.
lame.
You are not a wine drinker, but you're going to know.
I'm allergic.
Why?
Claire, you
Yeah.
probably don't know this about me, but I am allergic to wine. I'm allergic to the sulfites in wine. I used to drink wine. I even worked like in a liquor store and stuff. But these days, I'm not. I prefer to breathe instead of going anaphylactic. So I cannot drink wine. Tequila, I'm there.
Good choice on the breathing thing. Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so all those good things get transferred out. So what are those good things? They are like 15-letter words. But the most of them, I could go over the individual ones, but unless you're a scientist, they probably won't mean much to you other than the word antioxidant. So pretty much all of the good things that come, or the majority of the good things that come off of those skins are antioxidants. And antioxidants are very healthy for us because they help to balance those nasty free radicals that get loose in our bodies and cause havoc. So, in my research, I discovered that wine is a great preventative for a lot of different diseases and physical issues. It is generally not a cure, but it can be a helper to help things get better. So if you currently have something, probably don't look to wine as your curative. There's probably much better curatives out there. Wine is naturally antibacterial because of those natural defense systems. And so the first thing it can do is to help treat stomach irritation and other digestive disorders. Who would have thought? So again, drinking too much wine can have the opposite effect. It can cause stomach problems. But keeping within those limits that we talked about earlier, it could actually help treat your stomach irritation and other digestive disorders. There's also a type of bacteria that can get out of control in your stomach, and this can help reduce the risk of it getting out of control. The antioxidants can help lower bad cholesterol. And this is if you already have cholesterol, along with a healthy diet, that 5 ounces of red wine every day could help, or 5 days a week, could help lower your bad cholesterol, especially if you choose the types of wine that are made with higher fiber grapes, such as Tempranillo, which is a grape out of Italy. And it's excellent. It's very dark, but it also is high in fiber. So it's amazing what you can find on the internet. So if you have a particular issue that you heard that wine might be helpful for, you can actually Google it enough to find out exactly what type of grape, because there are literally, I think the last number I saw was 100,000 types of grapes in the world. So I'm sure there is a particular grape that is best suited for whatever your ailment is to help take care of. So it can also help to lower blood sugar, especially if you're a diabetic. It can help lower your blood sugar along with the healthy diet. You can't go eat all that ice cream and then drink a glass of wine and think it's going to offset everything that ice cream did to you. Eat healthy, then have the wine as your helper. It also lowers systolic blood pressure, which is good. It can help to lower inflammation that cause all those joint issues we have, like arthritis. And it can also, that lowering of the inflammation can also help to battle anti-immune systems or anti-immune disorders like fibromyalgia, a couple of others. Can also help to keep you slim because it does something with the cells that makes it want to let go of the fat in the cell. It doesn't, like if you're overweight and start drinking wine, you're not going to get skinny.
Oh,
What?
no, I was gonna take that chance of breathing.
But what it does is the fat wants to grab onto your cell, and the wine, the antioxidants in it will make it like it won't stick, and the fat will go away. So any new fat cells, it will limit the growth of new fat cells because of that. So not a bad thing. There's one right there. Um, it also will help to keep your heart healthy, but here's another one of those: too much goes the other way. So what wine does is it keeps your vessels, your blood vessels, flexible and elastic. But if you drink too much, the exact opposite happens and they get hard. Again, this is something that I did not know of. Had I known, I would have treated myself differently all these years. Antioxidants can actually treat the common cold. Now, I always wondered why, when I got a cold, I had an urge to eat fruit. Don't know why. This is probably why. And it was probably, I just didn't interpret it properly. It was probably dark fruit because blackberries, blueberries, strawberries, all of those dark fruits, cherries, have antioxidants on them. And I've known that for a long time, but I never realized that my body wanted antioxidants to help fight the common cold. So and they do it by getting those free radicals that have a strong role in those colds hanging on, but also cancers and other diseases. So they do reduce, here we go with the reduce of risk. They reduce the risk of some cancers so far, because science is finding new things all the time. So far, basal cell, which is a lot of skin cancers, basal cell, colon, prostate, ovarian, and breast. So I currently am a breast cancer patient. And so when I got the diagnosis, I did my research on this and I discovered that there are certain types of wine that are more effective in the prevention of breast cancer than others. So specifically for breast cancer, it is red wine grown in colder regions than versus warmer regions. So we're looking for a red wine that was grown anywhere in the country of Chile, northern France, northern Spain, northern Italy, anywhere that's colder and mountainous. Possibly Washington State, definitely not. California is considered a warm region. The more that they are studying grapes, the more that they're wine, the more that they're finding, and they can get more and more specific. If you, like I said earlier, if you have an ailment, you can go in and actually do some Googling and start to look at these research papers that they have out there to find something specific about what might be helping, what might help you. Yeah, interesting stuff. So these antioxidants reduce the risk of developing plaque on your brain that is present for Alzheimer's patients. That is something that I worry about every time I forget a word, but also reduces the risk of depression. Again, one glass 5 days a week versus a bottle 5 days a week. Too much alcohol creates depression. Just the right amount helps fight it off.
I have a question about that, Linda.
Uh-huh.
If you live alone and you only want to have one glass a day, can you recork a bottle and will it have the same benefits still the next day?
Yes. Yes. And that actually, I think week 5 is when we're talking about that, how to save your wine. You can actually, there's a way to save your wine so that a bottle of red wine is good for 7 days. Oh, easy. Yep. And it's super easy. So to do it. And white wine, you can save, depends. on the kind of white wine it is, probably about 5 days, 3 to 5 days. So the sweeter wines save longer than the drier wines when it comes to whites.
So how little I drink wine. I used to buy a bottle of Lambrusco or whatever to add to spaghetti sauce that I would make from scratch. And that bottle would sit in my refrigerator for 2 months, and then I'd use another cup of it. Or I'm sure it was not good at that point.
Really, that is a suggestion that I tell people is if you still haven't drank it within 7 days, you can still save it as long as it's corked properly. You can still save it for much longer until it starts to turn to vinegar. And then even it still has purposes, but you can definitely cook with it for a very long time.
Oh, okay. So I was probably already.
Yeah, because it will start to turn vinegary. Once oxygen touches it, it starts this whole different process where it really does start to fall apart. It's going on. And then, so it will actually turn vinegary. It smells like vinegar, tastes like vinegar. But I don't know. In mine, I have a tarragon vinegar. I've got several different types of vinegar and I use them in different recipes. So yeah, wine that's turned to vinegar could still be used in a lot of different recipes.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
well,
Good point.
well, yep. So throw those bottles of wine out till they start to smell bad. At that point, that some didn't go right, but it is time to clear it out.
In my case, I don't know if I can cook with it or not because of the sulfites. I don't know if the sulfites cook out or not. So I'm like, nope, not taking those chances.
Keep listening. I may have the answer to that a little later because we do talk about sulfites toward the end. Okay. And that answer might be in there. All right, so here's my favorite thing about wine. It promotes longevity. So I don't know if anybody has ever heard of the blue zones. So this was a study done by Dan Buettner, I think that's how you say his name. And he studied demographics and found in the world the 5 original blue zones where people lived the longest. And a good part of the population lived to be 100 in these areas or older. And in these places, 4 out of those 5 original places drank some sort of wine every day. Here's a side thing. They also drink tea, some sort of tea every day. It's tea in the morning and a wine type of alcohol at night. So there's this whole thing. Your city can become a blue zone, all kinds of things you can do. But he has a book called The Blue Zone Kitchen, which has it's 100 recipes from those 5 areas of the world that live to be 100. They're all super healthy recipes. A lot of them are Mediterranean style recipes. If you think about Mediterranean cooking, they're 100%. Well, not 100%.
What's the bottom of that book, Linda? Further.
Michael.
We can't see the name.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, The Blue Zone Kitchen. And it's interesting. He taught, well, you can see right there. That's tea. These are teas here. And he interviewed a lot of people there. And the sad thing is, because of fast foods, these blue zones are actually disappearing. He found them just in time before they started disappearing because of fast food, unfortunately. But that's why he wants to get that message out. So if these people who can live to be 100 are drinking wine every day, we know that there is some basis to the healthiness of it. So along there, we know that drinking too much wine is not healthy. Drinking just the right amount is healthy, but all wine is not created equally. So the cool thing about wine is, and people who are really into this really enjoy this about wine, is that it tastes different every single year. So a Merlot from a particular winemaker made this year is not going to taste like the Merlot that he's going to make next year, even though he can use the exact same way of making it, letting it ferment for the same amount of time, letting it age for the same amount of time before he bottles it. It will still taste different. Why? Nature. That's why. Nature does not grow things identically every year, and a lot of it has to do with the climate. So it might rain more one year than it does another year. It might rain during a particular growth stage one year than it does another year. It might be hotter one year than it is another year. It could be hotter in a particular growth stage than it was. So every year, those grapes taste different. And the wine that they're going to create is going to taste different. And we see this in our trees. So here where I am, I have noticed in my lifetime is that if we have a wet, cool, not cold, but cool, a wet, cool spring where when the leaves are starting to bud off the trees, and then we have a dry, warm fall, we will have super colorful leaves, super colorful. But if it's reversed and we have a very dry spring when the leaves are budding and a very wet fall, we have very dull leaves. And it's the same for the grapes. Depending on what the weather is doing, is how the grapes are going to taste. And some of it also is how quickly they'll mature and how long they have to hang out on the vine until they're mature. So all of those things have to do with climate. And people who really love wine, like me, get excited about, ooh, I can't wait to taste this year's bottle because I remember what last year's tasted like. And this one, I hope it's going to be just as good or better. But there's not, all of us are not like this. And I didn't used to be like this until I learned more and more about wine and understood that wine is actually agriculture, right? Wine is an ag product. We don't think of it that way because we think of corn as an ag product. We don't think of wine as an ag product, but it really is. There are farmers out there that, that grow this stuff and they're just like farmers and they ride tractors and they're out there picking the grapes and just like they do with corn, but we don't think of it that way. But once that got into my head that it is an agricultural endeavor, then I got excited about how it tastes different every year because agriculture, I don't know, I grew up in a farm country. Agriculture excites me.
We did a vertical once of 3 different years of a Merlot. Amazing the subtle difference. And you're right. People don't think of an ag product. We think of I Love Lucy dancing, smashing grapes with her bare feet in a big wood.
Exactly. That's what we think of. And we forget about where those grapes came from. They they came from the vines out in the field. And that's perfect. The Merlot, I used Merlot when I was writing my notes as my example of that. It's still going to taste like Merlot because the Merlot has a Merlot profile. It's that grape. It's going to have this profile, but it could be just a little more naturally sweet. It could be a little more naturally dry. It could be a little more naturally tart. Yeah, there's just a lot of things that happen each year that make it just a little bit different. But unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I used to be like this. There are a lot of wine drinkers that crave consistency. So every bottle they buy, they want it to taste just like the bottle that they bought before. They want that year after year. And unfortunately, nature doesn't quite work that way. So the winemaker can help to meet that expectation by mixing different wines together. And this is one of the reasons why there is just a flood of wine out there called red wine. It's because they're trying to meet this consistency need that buyers have. So what they're doing in the red wine, a red wine is a blend of different red grapes. So the one I'm having tonight, this is a red wine. And it is a mix of a Cabernet Sauvignon, a Petit Syrah, a Zinfandel, and a Carbon. So it's a 4-grape blend. What they do, if they wanted to make this the same taste next year, what they would do is they would take those 4 grapes. They would know this year, maybe the mix was 25, 25, 25, 25% of each of those grapes to get this flavor. Next year, they'll have this bottle there. They'll go to taste it. They'll remember what they had before to match the taste. They may have to shift the blend. So it might be 30% of one, 45% of another, 15% of another, and then the final grape makes up the difference. So they can adjust the different amounts of the grape that they put in there to get to that similar flavor profile. They usually are pretty good at that when that's what they're trying to do. But when you get into these big companies that sell millions of bottles of one type of wine, of all of their different types of wine, they just sell millions and millions of bottles. Blending grapes isn't that easy because they're getting their grapes from all over. They don't grow the chances of them growing enough grapes to meet their volume that they need for their wine is pretty low. So they're purchasing their grapes from a lot of different growers, creating so that makes it really problematic to create a consistent flavor profile year after year. So how they do that is through the help of science and the FDA. So the FDA has approved over 250 different types of additives and chemicals that are allowed to be added to your wine. The EU has approved around 150 of these same additives and chemicals to be added to their wine. A little better out from Europe, but still, you don't know. So these additives and chemicals are what allow them to create consistency in their bottle after bottle, year after year. Now, if you were one of those people who crave consistency, now you may not crave it as much now that you know that. So the wine lobby has done its job, and winemakers are different than juice makers. Winemakers are not required to put any of the ingredients that are in the wine on the bottle, with one exception, and that is the sulfites. So sulfites are a natural chemical that is grown on the grape. It's one of their defense systems, part of their defense system. And it's especially for red grapes. And what it is, it's a natural preservative. And it allows the grape to stay healthy during its longer growing season. When they make the wine, then the same preservative helps the wine stay good longer in the bottle. In our marketing world, we like red wine to stay good in the bottle for 5 years. That's their goal, is to have it can stay longer. Some wines can stay good for, I don't know, hundreds of years. But our marketing goal is 5 years on the shelf. And that's standing tall. That's over here. That's standing tall. That's not properly stored on its side so that the cork stays wet. It's standing tall like this. So that preservative, 5 years like this. A lot of time, depending on the grape, there may not be enough natural sulfites in that grape to last for 5 years. So that's where they add sulfites. Sometimes they can add natural sulfites, or they can add chemically created sulfites, which are non-natural. And my guess is you are probably allergic to those chemically created sulfites more so than
I have tried both. I've been to natural stores that have, this is like the purest, where we don't add additives, because I know that they add, you said they can add the chemical ones. I know that there's some from other countries, and I forget them off the top of my head, that are more likely not to have added sulfites, but it's the ones that are even created naturally by the fermentation process that affect me. The smallest amount triggers me. It's bad.
That's that. So be careful. Yeah, be careful with drinking natural juices and things. Any of those the blueberries, the blackberries, because they have them too, because they're all part of the defense system.
Be careful of those. I have to be careful of things like the Angry Orchard and different fermented stuff like that that's out now as well. I really have to read labels and see, okay, and think. My thought process has to be, does this contain fruit of any sort that's been fermented, and how is that going to react with me? And it's a thing.
It's a thing, but it needs to be a thing for all of us. So we need to be drinking consciously and eating consciously, but drinking consciously too. I know that some people drink for the high that they get from drinking, but wine was not created for that. So wine was actually created because water was undrinkable back 3,000 years ago. So it was created so that people could hydrate. So that's a healthy thing right off the bat. So what we've bastardized it since then to go as commercial as what we are with it. But wine is not the only thing that they have bastardized the natural benefits of for in the name of commerce. Yeah, we just all have to be really careful about what we're putting in our bodies. And wine is just one of those things, but a lot of other things we need to be careful with. All right. So you don't have to tell us what they put on the label besides that. The only other thing that they're required to put on the label in the US is the ABV, which is the alcohol by volume. And the healthy wines tend to be between 11 and 13% alcohol by volume, ABV. When you go higher than that, even at 5 ounces, you can start to get lightheaded and feel high. If you get lower than that, first of all, you're not going to find a lot of wines that are lower than that. Maybe 10%, occasionally a 9%, but usually if they're lower than that, they've done something to them to take the alcohol, which is again, generally not always healthy unless it's been distilled. And that's a whole different show. So we'll talk about still wine in another thought. But generally that 11 to 13 is really, it's healthy, it's natural. And when you get to some of those higher, so there is some wine out there that's percent. It's also some of the processes that they do to get it to there are not healthy either. So just stick to that 11 to 13. 13 and a half, 14 is probably okay too, but the 11 to 13 for sure. All right. So how do we avoid all of those FDA approved additives? And it's really just like everything else you've been hearing. Drink local. If you, and I don't mean at the local bar on the corner. In every state, there are wineries. If you have a winery near you, check out their wine, see if you like it. Drink small, about 5.5 ounces or 5 ounces. Also, it's probably going to, I would say the local guys are not going to have a lot of additives in their wine because those additives are expensive. And these small little wineries don't have the money to buy these expensive chemical additives. So they are going to create wine that is very as natural as they can do. Be cautious of buying sweet wines. A lot of times they will add sugar to their sweet wines. But if you're buying dry wines, it's usually a very natural way of making wine without these additives. Now, there is one other thing that we didn't mention with the wine, and that is with the growers. If you can get wine that has that the grapes have been grown by a natural grower, you really want that too, if you can. It's hard unless you do some deep research. And sometimes even after that deep research, you still won't be able to find it. But even though a winemaker could not put any additives in it, where he buys his grapes, they can be adding things out in the field. They can be using pesticides, they can be using fungicides, and your best luck of finding natural growers is going to be the West Coast in the US because of the climate. The East Coast, almost all growers on the East Coast are going to use a fungicide because it's so humid and generally more wet. But that humidity is really the key. That high humidity just sets up the grapes for fungus to come join the party, and they can lose grapes because of fungus. So they use a fungicide so that they can have a decent crop every year and start and make money. And then the rest of them, a lot of them will grow or use pesticide. There are quite a few West Coast growers that are all natural growers. And if you can find them and then buy their wine, you're even better. And usually if you start to Google pesticide-free wine, they'll start to pop up and you'll see who they are. You may find an East Coast winery who is buying their wines from the West Coast because all winemakers do not grow their own own grapes. They buy their grapes from people who are good at it because it's an ag product. And so they don't want to buy a tractor. They just want to make the wine. So they leave the growing to somebody who knows what they're doing. So you may find East Coast or mid-country winemakers who are purchasing their wine or their grapes from the West Coast. And that's perfectly fine. You'll get good grapes that way too. All right. So our question is wine healthy? And the answer is yes or no. It can be both. It depends on what you're buying and what you're. All right.
It's how much of it you're doing and what you're doing to your liver.
Yeah.
While he's doing it.
That's right. So stick to that 5 ounces 5 days a week, and your liver will it will be happy with you, very happy, and your heart too will be very happy with you. All right. So any questions at this point?
I'm going to open Claire's mic if she wants to say anything or ask anything. I will allow to talk. Claire, you are welcome to ask any questions or join in the conversation at this point. No.
You hear me?
Oh, hey, Claire.
Okay, there you go. I'm the famous line with virtuals. You're on mute. Please check the power of the device and cable connection status, or press the input on your remote to change to. We're heading to California in September, and I know 2 winemakers out there. And they said, "Oh, our harvest, we started planting 2 weeks late, so our harvest is 2 weeks late. So the second week of September is a good time." Any suggestions? We're not going to Napa or Sonoma. We're going up the coast to Mendocino, coming down to Ukai, Healdsburg, and Petaluma.
You will love Healdsburg. So
I-
Healdsburg is where they do a lot of bottling. And since COVID, I was there during COVID, but since COVID, it has just exploded with wine tasting rooms. A lot of the local winemakers, instead of you driving out to them, they have opened a shop right in Healdsburg so that you don't have to, because when we were out there, we had to we drove all over the place, winery after winery, but they were several miles in between. Healdsburg now, from what I'm hearing, you can just have a walk and taste different wines from different winemakers all day long down their main street.
Looks like a party town. Yes.
Yep. Yep. And Mendocino is not, they grow a lot of wine out there, but it doesn't have the same, they just haven't put in the same amount of money toward advertising as Napa
Exactly.
and Sonoma.
But they've got their wood forests, so I'm looking forward to that too.
Yes. And have you ever seen those before?
No.
Oh.
My better half has, and he wants to drag me through California to introduce me to places that he used to live. What a shame.
What a shame. You will love the redwoods. I saw them when I was a kid, but then when we were out there in 2020, they were amazing. Yeah, you will have a very good trip.
Thank you for a wonderful education.
Oh, my pleasure. Was there any questions you had at all?
I don't. Wine is so fun. And I think the more you learn about it, the more fun it is. And it's just enjoyable. I was telling Mary Ann, we're going to a restaurant tonight that they let you bring in your own wine with a corkage fee. And it's like, we haven't been there since before COVID. So hopefully we'll get a taste.
Oh, yeah. I hope so. That's awesome. So have you already perused the menu so you know what wine to match up with what you're going to eat?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be rosé all night, rosé all day.
Oh, okay.
It,
There you go. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, it's Thai food, so it should go well.
Nice. Nice. I'm jealous. I want to come down and go out to you with you guys. Okay.
Okay, come on up.
Hang tight. So I'll be there in 45 minutes. Yeah. I was looking at their website when she first mentioned that. It looks really good, but they're not open for lunch. And I'm tend more towards traveling to Cincinnati during the day for lunchtime. So
What's the name of it?
Buddha Barn.
Where is it?
It's in Sailor Park in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
It's very off the beaten path, but still close enough to get to easily.
Yeah, I'm in Hamilton, and so we're always looking for places to go
Mariachi.
for new food experiences out of Hamilton. Hamilton has a lot, but we've done that. We're looking elsewhere now.
that's the really nice thing about here in Ohio, right? Is that we have within an hour drive, we have so many choices of being in Indiana, Kentucky, places in Cincinnati and Dayton and Columbus. We just have so many choices all around.
Yep.
And
And they all have their vibe.
a foodie. Cincinnati's really becoming a foodie town. And I totally agree with that because there's just so many restaurants just in over the Rhine that it's crazy.
Yeah, Loveland also is
Yeah.
opening a lot of entrepreneur-owned restaurants. So that's another one. So just these little off the beaten path, or places that used to be really off the beaten path, are becoming more food centric, and I think that's fantastic.
I wish they'd make Dayton that way. Dayton's still like into this like chicken wars thing, who has the most Nashville hot chicken and stuff. And it's not my thing.
Not mine either. I'm a vegetarian.
I-
Chickens are safe for me.
Where I stand with that these days, and I'm not going to get into that again, but yeah.
Very
All right.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for being with us today. I definitely appreciate the conversation about the wine, Linda, and teaching us. I used to work at a liquor store, and the most education that we had then was you eat white with this kind of food, chicken, and you eat red with this kind of food, Mexican or whatever. We didn't get education as far as this kind of stuff. And so I hope people find it invaluable. And I hope that they join us next Friday for happy hour because, Linda, the subject is
how is wine made?
Nice. It's made by Lucille Ball in a big wooden tub and bare feet. That is how it is made, Linda. We don't need to do that next week. What's the next?
with the fungicide on the feet.
Exactly.
There you go. The fucking side of the feet. That's it. That's it. Yep.
Exactly.
Believe it or not, that some wine is still made that way, but there's a lot more to winemaking than just dumping grapes.
So join us again next Friday at 4:00 for happy hour. I know a lot of people we don't have very many people on this live, but they do end up watching. We've had a lot of watchers on the website. That's the word, right? Watchers on the website and on YouTube joining us later in the weekend and next week as well. So I hope that you'll join us Friday, 4:00 Eastern time for happy hour. Bring your glass of wine, bring your questions, and let's find out how wine is made. Linda, thank you for educating us. Claire, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And I hope you all have a very wonderful weekend.
You too. Thanks for
You. Bye-bye.
Bye.